Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with the Average Joe Sports Show. We say thanks to a legend.
I'm Gary Sharp. Here we go. And there goes John Cook.
Hi, I'm Bill Doleman. How to honor John Cook as he rides off into the sunset.
Plenty more. Also, we'll talk Husker spring games, going to look a little different. Rocco Spindler, and a big one tonight at PBA. No, not the basketball team. It's the Husker dunk contest at halftime.
Once again for the Average Joe Sports Show podcast. Not quite the midweek edition, but getting you into the weekend edition. There is Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel,
Emergency,
Chris Schmidt. And like and subscribe to the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. Keep those subscriptions going up, up, up. The AJ Sports Pod on Twitter. And Spotify and iTunes is where we go. I am sad to say I don't own a Cowboy hat. If I did, I would tip it. I have not been afraid to look in any of your closets, so
that's how we're starting.
Yeah, let the hand grenade throwing begin. But in all sincerity, well done, John Cook, and what a really good, emotional but just heartfelt presser earlier today from the Nebraska legend, and pretty awesome for what he did and what he continued at Nebraska.
How do you think that one old guy in Ord Field about the fact that he was the one who pushed John Cook to retirement?
Hey,
Obviously,
Coach,
that's not
Louisville gal.
I mean, how and you know, we all kind of we've had times where we've gotten to know John, and I consider John a friend. I've known him, since the first day that he was the head coach here. I'm sad and happy, but he got to do it like the way yesterday unfolded was like so John Cook. You know what? There was no scandal. There's no I'm tired of NIL, the portal. It's I'm 68. I want to be a grandpa, and this just seems to be the right time. And I think one thing, it can't be undersold in all of this how seamless this was. I mean, think about it. You had to get two universities on board to agree to this, which they had agreed to, prior, and you were waiting for this day. And then for both to name their head coach. I mean, it's quite amazing. And I think Troy Dannen had a good day yesterday, but man, I'm happy and sad. I can't imagine Nebraska volleyball without John Cook, but man, 25 years. I wonder, and Bill, you know Coach Osborne better than anyone, is if the 25 years was a significant number, because Coach Osborne retired after 25 years, and we know that, John considers Coach Osborne his mentor.
Yeah, there's a lot of synergy with, going back to 1972 and 3, when you had, Devaney, who built the program, seamlessly hand the job over to a fairly unassuming, and I think stoic's a good word to describe both Tom and John. And when that happened, that took a lot of people aback when he gave the job to this 34-year-old professorial, pastoral, educational psychology student to try and keep the Nebraska football machine going and see if he can make it better than it was. And that worked out fairly well. And the years following Tom's retirement have been a roller coaster, and I hate the cliche, but you go back to when Terry Pettit made his, decision, not the announcement, but the decision. I still maintain it is one of the most fascinating and underappreciated stories and transitions that I can think of in any sport ever. To have, and I remember when John Cook was this young assistant coach who came in from California, and he was following Terry Pettit around the Coliseum. In his late 20s. So that's how far back I go with John Cook. But to think that you got the opportunity to build your own program, Wisconsin, and you build it into a national power in the blueprint of Nebraska, to where you are contending for with Nebraska for supremacy in the Midwest, upper Midwest, and Terry Pettit is able to say, John, you've done a great job there. I would like you to leave that behind and come be an assistant coach for a year.
Yeah.
And he did it. That is amazing to me. Not that I'm going to retire and you're going to get the job now, like what happened yesterday, but to convince him to come back and give him the vision. And that's Terry Pettit in his intellectual way to sell him on the vision of what John could become in his own career and what Nebraska volleyball could become with the foundation as it is. And for John to buy in and do that and do what he's done over the last 25 years is really one of the most remarkable coaching stories I think ever. And it's not really all that appreciated by, except maybe people in Nebraska. And I'm not even sure people in Nebraska fully understand what John gave up to come back and get the job. And to do it now with Dani Busboom Kelly to set her up the way that he has. And I think maybe he's been thinking about this for a while, that Dani's got a chance to win a national championship at home with Anna DeBeer. Maybe he would have retired a year ago if that wasn't the situation, but he realized the opportunity Louisville had with her, with that player, see if they can't get it done. And once that's over with and that chapter closes, now I'm going to ride off into the sunset, literally with a cowboy hat and a horse.
Pretty awesome. And I love hearing John Cook talk. I love hearing kind of the mental side of John Cook, and think of the talent he's acquired. When we talk recruiting, right? Recruiting classes, recruiting rankings. Think of the personalities he's meshed. Think of the depth he's built. Think of the other programs in volleyball that would kill to have Nebraska's rotational players or players that may not be seeing the court as much. But I just always kind of smile when he talks about multi-sport ball players that he looked at. And then also he really went after teachers' kids. I mean, I love both of those factors when it comes to, all right, how's a Dani Busboom going to take, senior year switching to libero. And I got a kick out of that story with the exchange, the R-rated exchange. and then he might know what he's talking about, but I'm really happy for him. And it really did pull at your heartstrings with him at the podium today, talking about, being a grandpa. And you don't think about that often with just what all these coaches go through with their own families and how much time they're away from their own families. They've got sons or daughters in the several thousands by the time a 25-year career is done. But the sacrifices that has been very real for a lot of these families. You're compensated well. You're immortalized. John needs 2 statues, not 1. But at this stage of the game, at 68 years young, he looks in his 50s. The guy can go to Big Sky Country and enjoy. So I'm really, really happy for him. And credit. I mean, the other part of this thing too is the pressure with following a legend and the size of that shadow and the personality and competitor you're getting that wants that opportunity. That's really cool too. A native Nebraskan, a former player, and Dani that's going to come in and keep the torch lit.
Well, and whenever I look at Dani Busboom Kelly, there's so many similarities between what she takes over and what John Cook took over coming from Terry Pettit. Obviously, John Cook, I think it was the full season as associate head coach before he takes over a team with a whole bunch of expectations. And to step into that moment and to go win a national championship in your first season as the full-time head coach, like that's pressure. And to be able to rise to that moment, there's going to be a similar feeling with Dani Busboom Kelly, where you look at it and it's a loaded volleyball squad that's been to the Final Four the past 2 seasons, both seasons, you could say, because it was short of a national championship, it feels a little bit hollow. All the regular season success that they had, they're reloading. It's the same expectations for a team with Dani Busboom Kelly, where it's national championship or bust next season. That's what it feels like. This team, this squad with Harper Murray and Andy Jackson and Laney Choboy and all this talent, a national championship, if they don't win one in their Husker career, it will feel like a disappointment, which speaks to the expectations that there is at Nebraska and the expectations that John Cook set at Nebraska. And like, you go all the way back to the start of his career, he wasn't even a volleyball guy. That's why I think makes John Cook's story even more spectacular is he grew up, he's playing high school football, playing high school basketball. He's a college basketball player, shows up to a little high school in California, and you got to coach volleyball now. He's sitting there late at night reading books on how the sport works. He doesn't even understand, but he took that same mentality that he learned playing high school football and playing high school basketball, college basketball, and brought it to the volleyball court and really changed the game. Like there's volleyball before John Cook and there's volleyball after John Cook. Like that's the kind of impact he had on the sport, specifically at the college level.
Yeah, DBK, I mean, John won a national title in his first year. Something you were saying, Elijah and Bill, about kind of the handoff of the program. So, I mean, she could walk in and win a national title just like John did in 2000. I think the thing about John, and this is where I wasn't shocked. You kind of had heard some murmurs that this was going to happen. We knew that this was going to happen eventually. Probably we never pegged the 29th of January, but, his team had just come back to campus. I really think last year, and he said it, the last 2 years he's had the funnest time. I think he was able to reflect and enjoy it more. And to go out like this, where he could go out on his own terms. But, I hope people realize that there's the human aspect of John Cook. So he is one guy that bleeds Nebraska, scarlet and cream. He is a fan of Nebraska, the state, the program. He refers to his team as the Huskers, but he basically has been a bachelor for the last couple of years in Lincoln, kind of a half bachelor. They built a home out in Wyoming. His daughter lives out in Wyoming. He's about to have her second child. And I think John, his family, and then Nebraska, but he really likes being a grandpa. And he's missed out on those opportunities. And, his wife is half and half. She'll come into Lincoln, then she'll go back out to Wyoming. He's living in downtown Lincoln. So I think everything kind of just came together. And I can appreciate, three of us on this panel are probably on our back nine. And we may wake up one day and go, you know what? I had a good life. And now it's time to hand it off to somebody else. Like Schmidt's going to hand off the number one chair to Elijah someday. And I think that's kind of what John did. He just kind of woke. He was like, you know what? This is the right decision. I'm not being forced out, but this is the right decision. And fortunately for Nebraska, and this is the crazy thing, guys, is they had this plan. This plan has been in place for a long time, but that doesn't happen at programs that have that are at the number one slot. I know football and volleyball are completely different, but don't kid yourself. Nebraska volleyball made $7 million. But look at Alabama had kind of a clunky handoff. Nebraska's was seamless. And so you're not going to have an abundance of players going in the portal. You're not going to have people going, I wonder why he left. And that's a tribute to John. He handled it this way, and there were no leaks either. So good. So good on the athletic department, which has sometimes not gotten out of their own way, and you have drama and you have leaks. They really handled this really well.
His goal was for this program, fellas, that he was part of, came back for, that you touched on, Bill, to continue its dominance, its excellence. And he's rooting for someone to do better than him, just like Terry Pettit was rooting for someone to take the baton and go to that rarefied air. And that's selfless, is driven and is competitive and is locked in, is that dude is John Cook. There's also the selflessness that you preach to your players, but you ultimately showed that big time in how you handed it off. Listen, if you're knocking on another title, how many coaches would hang to get that one last, that a boy, pat on the back, one last trophy, one last rodeo. And he gets out earlier to hand off. And you still have that chance to do it. The last part I'll say about John Cook, of all these attributes and well wishes and excellence, and we reflect on his career, I mean, for John Cook to have the landlord he has had the last few years, I mean that's also an exclamation point about what type of saint he is.
Yeah.
No, but I don't think you can underscore your point that you made enough though about the fact that he didn't finish on the mountaintop. Like with the team that he had over the past couple years, I know I spoke on that just a couple of minutes ago, but the expectations for the team he has in place right now are national championship or bust. And he kind of put himself to the side and said, you know, it's more important that the overall health of Husker volleyball, or for the overall health of Husker volleyball, that I turn this thing over now to a coach in Dani Busboom Kelly that's set up for success. Like he could have easily sat there and said, you know what, I need one more go. We should have won it last year. We should have won it the year before. We didn't do it. I want another chance because I want to finish at the peak. He didn't say that. That really speaks to who he is to say, you know what, he put the overall Husker volleyball program and its overall health over his own accolades and over what he wanted. Because you know he wanted to finish with the national championship. Like he's a competitor. He was gracious and he said it was the right time, but you know this weighed on him because he didn't want to finish without another national championship. And you just know that with the team he has right now.
Yeah, if they had won the national title this year, this would not be surprising at all. It's Manning and Elway walking off with the title, carrying the trophy, and it'd be like, absolutely. And I think everybody would like to have seen him win one more, one for the thumb, Pittsburgh Steelers, win one more, you get your 5, and then you call it good. But I said something on Chris's show this morning. John Cook has done something, and not on his own, but because he had the entirety of Nebraska volleyball fans and the state of Nebraska that put together Volleyball Day in Nebraska. I cannot think of another coach in another sport that moved a mountain so far or got to a mountaintop higher than anyone ever has than that night a year and a half ago in Lincoln. He moved he brought an entire sport into rarefied air. He leapfrogged women's athletics, Nebraska, all of that with volleyball. Now, again, there was Trev Alberts. There was a university willing to do it. Nebraska fans responded in 4 hours, selling out the place. I was not surprised they sold it out. They're thinking 30,000. But, Iowa tried to do it with Caitlin Clark at Kinnick Stadium. And, yeah, they got 30,000 people. They did not get 92,000 people to go to a sport that, just a few days earlier was really kind of a niche sport. We're all passionate about it. The state of Nebraska is passionate about it. There's a great volleyball community around the country, and it's a spectacular sport worldwide. It's very popular in the Olympics. But for him to be the one that's leading the band on, what was it, August 30th or whatever, Volleyball Day in Nebraska, no other coach has moved a sport and a culture like that. So winning another national championship, yeah, that would be great. But he can also look and say, I just did something, or I helped to do something that has never been done before. And I cannot top that. Nobody can ever top that again. And it's an incredible legacy. And I will just say this, it'll be fun to watch and it'll be complicated to say, welcome to the Baum Devaney Sports Center, where Nebraska takes on X team in John Cook Arena on Terry Pettit Court.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Bill, I'm with you. I think that's very much a possibility.
Is it not fitting though? Is it not fitting that the all-time record for attendance in Memorial Stadium will always be Husker Volleyball's, especially with South Stadium renovation coming? It's going to lower the capacity. You're never going to beat that 92,003 number inside Memorial Stadium. I think that's very, very special. The fact that that record at that place is held by Husker Volleyball, it speaks to just what that program is as a whole. It's an incredible thing to think back on that. You could look back in 50 years and all-time attendance record at Memorial Stadium. Oh, yeah, Husker Volleyball.
Well, think about this, too, and from the coaching perspective. Any coach will tell you, a successful coach especially, that you win the national championship, and guess what? You're back to work the next day. I can remember, Coach Osborne after the win in the Fiesta Bowl when they beat Florida 62-24, they're working the phones after the game. Got a chance to sit down a little bit. Somebody convinced them, I think, to go on a mission trip, but then they're back at it the next day trying to figure out, did you see the game? We got to try and win it again next year. It's always back to the grind to maintain the success that you have built. And I'm sure if John Cook had won number 5 back in December and thought he was going to go on with this crew until Harper Murray and Andy Jackson, Bergen Riley, Choboy in that class, I'm gonna go out with them. The pressure he would be feeling right now would be for 365 times 2.
Yeah.
But you can. There was volleyball day in Nebraska. It is just never going to get better than that, and there's nothing that can ever top that. So the grind is over for him, and the legacy is cultural, not just athletic.
Yeah, I like the phrase that he uses a lot, to dream big. And I like I think it's amazing, in a place like Nebraska where we had Tom Osborne for 25 years, and then we've kind of had a little bit of a revolving door in football. But look at Mark Manning, Rhonda Revelle, John Walker. I mean, Nebraska has some coaches. They had Francis Allen. They had Bill Straub, coaches that were there for a long, long time. And, I'm glad he referenced Bill Byrne, because I think Bill Byrne allowed John Cook in the brief time that they were together with John as the head coach to grow. But once he said, I'll never say no, I thought that was a great little story. And John is, everybody knows now, if you didn't, John's a great storyteller. But the fact that he said, Bill Byrne said, I will never tell you no, because Trev was kind of the same way, it allowed John to think big and to grow the sport. There's one thing when John was first starting, and, Terry Pettit left it in a really good spot. I mean, they're a national championship program. John was like, we got to pack the Coliseum. We got to have people scratching their backs on the bricks of the Coliseum. So he was he was selling tickets. He wanted kids in the building because he wanted kids to experience volleyball and Nebraska volleyball. And I think he always took that as a part of his job, is to grow the sport. And he has grown it to go from the Coliseum to the palace that is Devaney for volleyball to Memorial Stadium. And I think that's a great phrase of dream big, that nothing is, things are not, everything is attainable. And you look at it, really doesn't make sense, guys, that a state like Nebraska is so good in this sport. It's landlocked. It went through a stretch where, girls played more basketball or they played soccer. And then all of a sudden, starting with Terry Pettit and John Cook picked it up, you got a great state. You got the volleyball state, whether it be club volleyball, high school volleyball, college volleyball, and now pro volleyball. And I think John Cook is a huge reason why there are 2 places that house pro volleyball in Omaha are sold out, because of what he's done with his program.
And it's spread to all 93 counties, which is
really cool. I was playing this game with my roommate yesterday because he's a middle school teacher. So I just want to get his take. What are your thoughts? What percentage of young girls in the state of Nebraska have played volleyball in some way, shape, or form, whether it's competitive or whether it's just at recess? They understand the fundamentals of volleyball. They can hit a volleyball. And he's like, from what I see, probably 60%.
Wow.
Understand the sport of volleyball, can play it, whether it's recreation or competitively. And we even played the game. How many competitively have played at some point in their life? We're talking probably conservatively 30%, 40% of the girls in the state of Nebraska have played some form of competitive volleyball. You think about that, it's not like that anywhere else. Maybe California in the 1970s, but even that pales in comparison to what that sport is in the state of Nebraska and the significance it holds among young girls. It's incredible.
You have indoor facilities in your 2 largest cities, multiple indoor facilities that bring in tournaments. Yeah, and it's pretty awesome.
We talk about. So I was to say, we talk about the fact that here in Nebraska, you look at high school football in Texas, where they got spring football and organized summer workouts, and high school football is year round in Texas. High school volleyball is year round in Nebraska, and I think that this also kind of speaks to what the sport is around here.
No, absolutely. Episode 88 of the Average Joe Sports Show. Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, and kudos to John Cook for well wishes. Amazing career and job well done, good sir. Let's keep with that Memorial Stadium theme. We don't know how many are going to be at the stadium for late April with this spring game. I'm not going to lie. Spring game always holds a special place just because of all the years I go down there with my dad. And the old drug-free pledge.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of druggies in Nebraska now.
I hope because of the change, but
I hope that the local authorities are ready for just a lot of kids doing fentanyl because of Nebraska adjusting the spring. It's true. The Say No to Drugs pledge. Did you look at the numbers, Schmitty? They will tell you that the drug use was down in the state. They stopped the Say No to Drugs pledge on the field, skyrocketing.
I just thought it was a supply and demand thing. I just thought it was a dry stomach.
They rerouted the traffic to I-70 as opposed to I-80. And to give you an idea of how important those type things are, back when I was doing the Osborne stuff and working with Husker Vision, I would host or MC the School is Cool Jams, where they would take Husker athletes to elementary schools around not just Lincoln, but the state. And, Brooke Beringer and guys like that would do it. Corey Dixon, I remember, and other athletes from other sports. And they interviewed this kid one time, 10-year-old, 11-year-old. And they said, well, what did you think of the program today? Oh, it was great. I'm really starting to think about changing. So I don't know what the kid was doing. I don't know what his career goals were. If he'd watched too many Goodfellas movies with that. But the School is Cool Jam, he says, I'm thinking about changing. We put at least one youth on the straight and narrow in the state of Nebraska.
The drug-free pledge, the chance to get a glimpse. I always remember the old Bobby Newcomb, Adrian Martinez. You got your first glimpse, really, of Dylan Raiola in the spring game. The all-important Tommy Frazier, the all-important quarterback spot. What'd you think? Let's make a mountain out of
Breon Carnes.
Thank you. 5 for 7 throwing the football.
Who was his name just escaped me, that had a great spring game, did the somersault in the end zone? Everybody was talking about him. He was from Ohio, wore number 10. Turner? Was it Jamal Turner?
Jamal Turner was a Texas kid, but
that's who it is.
That sounds right. Yeah,
he went nuts. He made a great catch Lansing and had a great spring game.
Because that spring game, that was that the first spring where he was playing wide receiver, because he was recruited as a quarterback.
Yeah.
And then they make the switch early in his career to have him play wide receiver, and he had that wow moment in the spring game. And that's the main thing you're going to miss with the spring game. Like, first off, if there's no spring game moving forward, which I don't know, if you're not going to have an actual game, like just put a concert in Memorial Stadium or something, in my opinion, have the Savannah Bananas play there. Like, maybe that's just me. I'm not interested in watching a Husker flag football game at Memorial Stadium personally, if that's what it is, who knows. But think about all like the little moments that you had. That's what the spring game is about. Like, the score doesn't matter. It stopped being 1v1s a long time ago. You get the mixed roster. It's just a chance to see, first off, the kids in the program that have been working their tail off, which this is also going away with the 105, but those kids that have been working their tail off, the walk-ons from some small town in western Nebraska, that they don't get to play on Saturdays in the fall, but man, they get their spring game opportunity to show out in front of their friends and family in the second half. Like, the names that stand out to me, Wyatt Mazur is a name that is like, man, did he play much in the fall? No, but did he always have a spectacular spring game? Yes, absolutely. Like, those are the little things that you miss, where it's like, man, we would have never talked about this guy in the state of Nebraska, but he just put up 70 yards in the second half of the spring game, and the whole state's talking about him now.
Chris Butler for Heisman.
Yeah, Bill and Schmidt will get this reference. On behalf of Joel Cornwell, I apologize for Elijah, Joel Cornwell was a great guy. I got to know him when I started in school, but he was, I don't know, guys, what was he, like third, fourth string quarterback? But it seemed like every spring game he was really, really good. But don't you think now, don't you think we got now, we didn't know back in August that the roster was going to go down to 105, but don't you think what the 1890 scrimmage is basically what they're going to do?
Probably.
I mean, you got to find a way to make money, because Nebraska made $1 million off the spring game. It just shows you the power of football in the state. The Nebraska in a spring game made $1 million for the athletic department. But I love that 1890 practice. I mean, I thought it was pretty informative, and I would think that would go over pretty well.
They might do a couple of those, and it might end up being like what you see in the NFL now during training camps, where they just have a field with stands now. I mean, it's an open deal. In the NFL, I don't think fans pay to go watch them play, but if you tell Nebraska fans you want to be competitive, 1890 or do whatever, yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, and maybe we get you a Groupon for a family of 4 or whatever. But that might be the way going forward, is that there are practices, more than one, that are open where people can come out and mix and mingle if they have to. Maybe there's some other type of entertainment that's going on. I don't know, but you're right. It can't just be, well, we're not going to do spring games anymore because of the 105 or whatever the rules are for football. You still got to figure out ways to generate cash, and a spring game is one way to do it. I hope it doesn't, turn into these, all-star skill game competitions, and maybe we're going to have instead of the Manning brothers coaching against each other, it'll be the two Martinezes, Adrian on one side and Taylor on the other, and their teams get to play flag football. I don't know. I don't want it to turn into some type of, joke thing, but it's going to probably turn into, a good time for all, feel good deal, but they can't do away with something where you can possibly generate some revenue, right?
Well, make it. The only other take would be to go preseason with it, where your starters do go for one series, and invite Coach Lance and KU up. And I mean, that's risk. I get it. It's 105. It's NIL. It's poaching protection. It's no Spygate. Here's what we want to do. Don't show anybody on film or TV. I understand it absolutely, but it'd be cool to have. All right, if you're going to do it, go in and bring in an Iowa State or a K-State or a KU, and your starters play one series, and then let's see who can make the squad and who stays on the squad.
Yeah, I think I wonder if they have there'll probably be a little bit of 11-on-11, more 7-on-7. Maybe they have a futures 7-on-7. Yeah. Where you don't necessarily see Raiola under center, but you see Davila and some of the other guys that are playing. Because I think that's what we want to go see in a spring game, is we want to see the young guys. Mm-hmm. What do they look like? Just get a little bit of a tease. But I imagine they will make it fun for the fans. I would love them to put it on a Friday night.
Good call.
That'd be a good idea. And let us not also forget that I believe the taps will be flowing at some point at Memorial Stadium, and you want to make some money on a Friday or a Saturday night. If they can, up the profit margin on sales within Memorial Stadium and the grounds that surround, to pay for an offensive tackle in the next transfer portal window, they'll figure out ways to keep people entertained and in their seats in Memorial Stadium for a couple hours on a Friday or a Saturday, maybe more than once.
I think one of the important things that you need to make sure is whatever the spring game is going to be moving forward, it's hand in hand, is that children's involvement. We're super important. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure about you guys. My first Husker game ever was a spring game. My dad was not going to shell out on Husker tickets in the fall for his 6-year-old. I get it. Looking back, I was mad at the time, but looking back, I get it. My first ever Husker game, I think my first couple were all spring games. You got to go in there. Hey, tickets are free if you do the drug-free pledge. We do it from our seats because my dad didn't want to make the trek all the way down to the field and then back to the seats. So we'd sit there and do it in the stands. But that's what it was to me is my first Husker experience, my first time seeing the Sea of Red, though it's not the same, but it's close. It was a spring game. I think you need to make sure that is considered moving forward, that, hey, you got to get the kids involved, get them some hands-on one-on-one time with some of the players down on the field or something like that, because we've seen the Husker results the past 10 years. I'm not sure if you guys talk to any kids below the age of 14, but Husker football to them isn't what it was to me and to you and to everyone else growing up in the state of Nebraska. It's not the same anymore. You got to find a way to bring the kids back in. You got to make sure that they're involved with the spring game in some way, shape, or form, because that's who it's for me. It's for seeing the young guys at Nebraska, and it's for the young people of the state of Nebraska to get their experience with Husker football at a good cost.
Mid to late 80s, dad drags you down to the spring game. There's old Jack Pierce that gets you onto the field. There's a guy named Broderick in the stands wearing a Yankees hat signing the football for you. And it's a rainy spring in 2002, and you're sitting with your father saying, I think I'm going to ask this gal to marry me. I mean, that's legit. I mean, that's where it all kind of happened. No wonder Dad's so nuts about football. This Broderick guy is pretty cool. His Yankees hat, was wearing it like that. And I still have that football somewhere. And then, yeah, it was Doleman can get me a hell of a deal on a diamond.
I think it's funny that whenever I think it's funny that as you're discussing spring game memories, you went Broderick Thomas, seeing him at the game, number one. Also, the time I was considering proposing to my wife, that's on the list as well. But Broderick Thomas,
Broderick never threatened me. The bunny may have. As we wind it down, speaking of making money and talking a little bit about NIL. Let's talk Rocco as that tour continues. What do we think in Pitt and Virginia this weekend? Maybe Sunday's the decision day. Michigan also in play, and Nebraska had him on campus. Thoughts, fellas? It'd be cool to have a Rocco on the offensive line if you're Nebraska, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, once he left campus and he started going elsewhere, I wondered, what is he looking for? Nebraska's, I don't think Rule doesn't strike me as a guy that, he's going to hit you with the offer and the want. But if you're going to play that game, Nebraska will pull the ripcord.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to, I think this is correct. Rule wasn't on campus, right?
He was down at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I think he was out recruiting, and so he wasn't in Lincoln.
Yeah. But, I mean, you got your position coach and you got the peers, the guys you're going to play with, that offensive line room. And
if I know anything about Coach Raiola, warm, fuzzy, great, very welcoming on a recruiting visit. Like, that's what you want. and I say that tongue in cheek, but it is also like Dani Raiola wants guys and he connects with guys that are like him. And I don't know, there is some linemen want to be coached like that. Some football players want to be coached like that. With the guy that isn't warm and fuzzy, he'll tell you how it is. He will not beat around the bush and BS you. That's who Coach Raiola is. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a nail in the coffin that Raiola is the guy, but it is funny to think about Coach Raiola being the person to welcome you to campus on a recruiting visit.
Here's my question about it. First of all, great name. Everybody would love to have a Rocco. Right?
Spindler's List.
No question.
No, that's so wrong.
What is his list? Pitt, Virginia, Michigan. So,
oh wow.
Look, and I know that there's a lot of hype around him, and he's coming from a prominent program, played for the national championship, and started. I get that. Is he wanted because he's the one that is now available? If he had been available at the opening of the transfer portal window, a month plus ago now, or whenever that was, would he have been priority 1, 2, 3 somewhere in there? Because Nebraska went through how many names they end up on the guy from Alabama, Pritchett, is that right? And so they get one. Then there was the talk about the guy from Nevada and other places, and they don't land them. But down this guy's available. So yes, he comes from a good program. Yeah, he's a good player, starter. But is it just because he's the shiny toy that's available this week? And there's going to be players that'll be available after their spring shows, whatever it is going to be in April, and the next window opens. So that's my only question about this. Is Nebraska and our Nebraska fans enamored because this is what's available right now? Yes, he's good. I get it. But would he have been the target, the number 1, 2, or 3 target back in December?
I think that's a great question. I think his value's through the roof because of what he did, and that's start 13 games and really perform well. And now it just speaks to what Notre Dame's got going, that the guy started 13 games and he isn't sure he's going to win his job. So
I remember we talked about this before, that with 105 and potential injuries, you got to have versatility. So maybe he can slide over and be a backup center. Maybe he can slide out and be a tackle. I don't know that. But I think when you're looking at transfer portal offensive linemen, there's got to be the versatility to swing from left to right, positions in the middle. If you're going to spend a lot of money, it can't just be, we're going to go get ourselves the best right guard that there is. He's got to be able to do a multiplicity of things because injuries are going to happen and you're going to be stuck with 105.
Or do you have somebody else on the roster that you can use as that swing guard, center, tackle if he's kind of a one-hit spot at right guard this late in his career? So I don't think he's played much else, Elijah, has he?
Right guard is what he knows. It's what he's been.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll be back.
But before we get out here, I do want to make a quick question to you all. Let's pose the question. Let's make our bets. Who wins the Husker football dunk contest at the halftime of the Illinois game tonight?
That's what you're wondering about the basketball game tonight. Okay.
Yeah. I don't care about the result.
Unfortunately,
come on.
I've put a fork in the Husker basketball team. It's
kiss of death from Elijah means a Huskers roll tonight.
I think the losing streak reaches 10 before they break out of it, but we'll see.
Wow. Let's see here. They're at 6, 7. I'm trying to think what game that would be. Ooh, that'll be a rough trip to the Pacific Northwest. It's too bad that Carter Nelson is coming back from an injury. I would have loved to see him in this. My pick, Malcolm Simpson.
Yes, good call. He was kind of showing a little bit of the hops on Twitter. Yeah, it's good.
Well, since I don't know who's in it, I'm going to agree with Gary. Like I know, I agree with you, Gary, on that, and based on my scouting on that. I don't know who's in it. Was it Jamarl Charles won it last year or something?
He did.
Jeremiah Charles. Yeah. So I'll take Harburg. I think tight end body Harburg is going to be high flying, and I think that's going to be electric. So give me the white dude to win the dunk contest.
They can't jump.
Bold move, Cotton. Bold move. With that, place your bets, and we'll check in with you Sunday live.
It's not within the borders of Nebraska.
I know.
Okay.
We know where the river is and how to cross it. So that is Bill Doleman. That is Gary Sharp. That's Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Find us Sunday with the Average Joe Sports Show live, 10:30, and find it on YouTube. The Average Joe Sports Show, the AJ Sports Pod on Twitter. Subscribe, download, and find it Spotify, iTunes as well. We'll holler this weekend with you. Thanks.